That's what I think.
In the startup world, us founders, the way we talk to each other is, if you're gonna fail fast.
Yeah. Yep.
Right?
Yep. 100%.
Because if you don't fail fast, you don't know what's going on. In marketing,
you say the same thing.
They'll tell you, like, put it out there. Let's see how your customer reacts.
Yep.
Yeah. I can look at it like, even in the CPA world, right? Let's say some CPAs are doing your taxes.
Better not mess my taxes.
Yeah, you want your taxes to be perfect, and the IRS shouldn't come
pay
for
more
you.
money.
Right? But you know what? Sometimes you just get, by chance, audited. It's not that the CPA wasn't perfect, but everybody's expecting that perfection.
Right.
And maybe that's what the pressure is that your employees are feeling, because they don't want to let you down, and they don't want to let the clients down, and then they hold.
If you're doing everything right and you're making a lot of money, you need to make sure you're doing everything well and you have a rubric for it.
What's going on, beautiful people? Welcome to another episode of Beyond the Grind.
BTG.
Hey, if this is your first time tuning in, please make sure to hit the subscribe button so you don't miss out on any of our future content. Our channel is literally about business and lifestyle. So if that sounds like something that you're interested in, please make sure to like, share, and subscribe. My name is Kay.
My name is Alan.
And I'm Tosin. And today, I want to touch on a little bit about perfection versus good enough.
Oh, that's an interesting topic.
It is, because I've been trying to preach this thing to my staff, right? I know some of us are perfectionists. Whenever we're doing anything, everything's got to be just right.
It's not ready yet.
No, it's not ready yet, but we missing deadlines here and it's not ready yet. Like, come on. Like, there should be a point where, like, it is good enough. Yes, will somebody find issues? Will they find errors? You know what? Yeah. To me, or at least let me put it this way. When I hire somebody, right? We always say, or they say that, hey, the next person you hire needs to bring up the average, right?
Yep.
But, bringing up the average doesn't mean that they need to be the best person out there.
Correct.
So as long as they're 80% as good as me, the rest, we can train it. We can work with
You're
it.
80% as good as you're winning.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Actually.
But I'm kind of tough, I'm kind of intense, so 80% needs to be at least. If not, you need to go. All right.
Yeah.
But that's where I'm going. I'm not looking for perfection, but I'm just looking for someone who's good enough, and we work with the rest.
Good enough.
But what do you guys think?
I might pass. I'm a dentist, so good enough is
It doesn't work for you.
doesn't work as well.
No, tell us.
In the context of a business.
No, but tell us more.
For my business, they gotta be good enough works as long as it's in compliance with the board.
That sounded very legalese.
And then also, I have my own standard. I know no one's gonna be exactly me, but I need them to be at a point where if they go to another office, they're at least able to see what was done in our office and not be like, why'd you go there? So it doesn't have to be at necessarily the level that I'm at, which I'm not perfect, but we're all going to have our own nuances where we want certain things to be a certain way. So I think as long as it meets the board's requirements, and what I tell people is, if this will not go in your mom's mouth, then don't do it. Don't do it. Unless you don't like your mom. Which is kind of messed up.
That's a different podcast.
But
all right.
But you know what I mean? Like, you should do work that you're proud of. If this is your best and you feel like it's your best, then I at least know that this is what you think best looks like.
Right.
Then I'm like, okay, this is where it's all wrong.
Right.
And this is what it needs to look like. If yours doesn't look like this, then don't even come get me.
Right.
Unless you don't understand how to get here. But if you understand how to get here and you're just thinking that this is good enough, I'm like, no, it should look like at least this. So it's, like I said, it's complicated.
80%.
It's my specific business. But to me, I think anyone coming in, as long as they're somewhat competent, like we talked about before, work ethic, then that's good enough.
Mhm.
I could mold that into what we need.
Right.
They don't have to be me exactly.
It's quite interesting that you asked that, because when I think about perfection versus good enough for me, it's all about progression.
Mhm.
When I was running my company, Zazu, I will always tell people, like, you know, progress builds, what's the word? Progress builds business,
Mm-hmm.
but perfection
All the
builds,
sayings, huh?
We got a lot.
progress builds business.
I like that.
Perfection builds pressure.
Mhm.
And the last thing you need, right, is for your folks to feel pressure or feel fear, because when that is happening, they will never get anything done.
Yeah.
Because, oh, is it good enough? You know, is it this? Is it that? Right? And the reality is, the mindset should be, look, does it work?
Does
Right?
it work, and are you proud
Right.
of it?
And
That's what I think.
in the startup world, you know, us founders, the way we talk to each other is, if you're gonna fail fast.
Yeah.
Yep.
Right?
Yep. 100%.
Because if you don't fail fast, you don't know
Yep.
what's going on. In marketing,
You say the same thing.
they'll tell you, like, put it out there. Let's see how your customer reacts.
Yep.
Yeah.
And then you'll know how to tweak it. Because at the end of the day,
Don't wait for the perfect,
Yeah.
you know,
There's no-
ad or whatever it is.
exactly.
And
That's
then
what I
you
said.
Wait before you even test it.
Exactly. There's a reason why, you know, when you have a business idea, it's wise for you to build what you call an MVP, minimum viable product.
Yeah.
Because
Right.
if you spend all your time, all your
The
effort,
Windows.
all
mess.
your money into building the perfect product,
Flop.
and you feel like, hey, I've built the perfect product market fit, and then you put it out there
Flops.
and it flops,
You'd be so crushed too.
you'll be crushed.
Yeah.
And then you take longer to exit it because you're so invested in it
Exactly.
emotionally.
And so when you build an MVP, the mindset is, okay, is it good enough?
Yeah.
And if it's good enough, you put it out there as progress.
Right.
Yes.
You know,
And then you
so
tweak it.
it's always good for
Yeah.
employees or whoever to have a mindset. I mean, the difference between perfect mindset and progress mindset
Yeah.
is that, you know, with the progress mindset, it's like iterative. You're constantly making improvement,
Right.
because you
Yeah.
know it's never going to be perfect.
Yeah.
Right? Whereas perfection, it's led by pressure and
never
fear.
gonna be.
And you'll never ever put anything out. And you might start missing deadlines and start hurting the
Off
business.
little things that could be fixed later on.
But I mean, there's some of us that in maybe some of our jobs, industries,
Mhm.
people are expecting us to be perfect.
Right.
Right.
You know,
But
so I
I
can
think-
look at it like even in the CPA world,
Uh-huh.
right? Let's say some CPAs are doing your taxes.
Better not mess with my taxes.
Yeah, you want your taxes to be perfect, and the IRS shouldn't
I
come
gotta pay
for
more
you.
money.
Right?
Mhm.
But you know what? Sometimes you just get by chance audited. It's not that the CPA wasn't perfect,
Nah.
but
Mhm.
everybody's expecting that perfection.
Right.
And maybe that's what the pressure is that your employees are feeling, because they don't want to let
we-
you down and they don't want to let the clients down. And then they hold.
We have
Right.
a saying, like in anything health care related or insurance related,
Mhm.
that some of the third party builders have told me, if you're doing everything right and you're making a lot of money, you need to make sure you're doing everything well and you have a rubric for it, right?
Mhm.
Follow the rubric. If you're making money, you're gonna get audited.
Right.
Yeah.
So just get that out, get your anxiety out and just get it out. Like, if you're not making money, you're less likely to get audited.
Yeah.
If you're making money, they're gonna say, why is this person making more money? Or why is there an outlier here, right?
Yeah.
So that's kind of what I've understood. So taking that fear out of everything, instead of being on the point of, oh, let me do this perfect, da 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 da. Well, okay, so let me just make sure that I'm doing everything that I'm supposed to be
Mhm.
doing, right? Minimal viable product,
Mhm.
and we can tweak everything else.
Yeah.
To the point that you made about, okay, you're in the tax business, right? It needs to be perfect. I think, especially in the business, there are certain things that should be standardized.
Yes.
Yes.
That has to be perfect,
Yeah.
right? So when you build in standardization into your business,
Yes.
right? Those things, perfection at that point it's not hard, right?
Just
You know what needs to happen.
Right.
I think it's when you're playing in the uncharted territory,
Right.
that is when you don't need to be perfect, because even you're not sure what perfection looks
Correct.
like.
Yeah.
Does that make
Yeah.
sense? I think that
That was a good clarification.
we all know that 1 + 1 is 2.
Yeah.
So when you know 1 + 1 is 2, you're always going to be perfect when you're doing that math, right? But then when you're doing 1 divided by 3, let me not even put math.
Recite pi.
When you're not doing math anymore, when it's not logic, like 1 + 1 = 2, at that point, when the end results is relying on external party, when the end results, isn't in full your full control, that is where there needs to be some grace, right? That is where you need to be a bit more lenient. That is where you exercise progressive mindset, good enough mindset over perfect mindset. I think when you talk about the perfection mindset, you have to look at it from the standpoint of, if this is something that is standardized, right? It needs to be perfect, which isn't hard.
Well,
It shouldn't be hard.
Even if you have a
There are gonna be some
checklist of
errors.
things,
People-
right? There still could be some errors, or there could even be some personal judgment that can be thrown in, even in that process that you have.
That's the
That's
key
what
word.
he said.
Judgment.
Judgment.
Anything
Yeah,
that
and then
anything that
we're about to say the same thing.
uncharted territory, or
Yes.
that can be looked at as that can be interpreted, if that makes sense, right? That you don't need to be perfect. But when it comes to math, there is no.
There's errors.
No, I'm saying.
But
I'm,
I
I'm
know
saying,
what you mean.
I'm saying, like,
But the
it's-
input, could be.
But what up?
you know?
Only thing I would say is that you two are both right. But I would just say that when you're replacing yourself, I'll be thrilled if I had someone who had 80% of my like that's literally
That's
what
a high bar, bro.
That's a very high bar, actually.
It-
to be
bring that down
honest,
to
like
like 40%.
any business person that has someone who's at 80%, and you're like, they're not 100% me. Man, send them my way.
No,
Send them my
it
way,
depends
bro.
on what it is, because if you're the one making my car, I need that brake to be 100% accurate when I'm
No,
hitting
but
the
I'm
brake.
saying,
Yeah,
if they're
but-
doing. You're
no,
talking
no.
about one task. I'm talking about all you do.
No, but
It can do 80% of the tasks you do.
even
You're ready to scale.
let's
You
even
don't need to
let's
do your
even
job.
stick to his what do you call it?
There's gonna be
Analogy.
growth there, right?
Right.
So at some point they're gonna grow from 80 to 90 to 100, right?
Nobody
if
can ever be 100, bro.
I'm just saying,
Sticking
like,
with
there's
your
growth.
example there, right?
Uh-huh.
Person that's putting on those brakes puts them on perfectly. However, you start driving and you go out there and those brakes break, right?
Uh-huh.
Is it the person that put it on's fault? Or is it the manufacturer?
It is the
Is it-
manufacturer's
Yeah.
fault.
So there's something about expecting perfection everywhere
Yeah.
that tends to hold us back, because now you'll be like, oh man, did they make this brake real well? Maybe I shouldn't drive my car no more, you know?
Remember, wait.
Those are repetitive tasks. That's what
Remember I talk about standardization,
Yeah.
right? So you need to have factored in that if the brakes
Right.
break, but something should happen to protect the rider. Maybe the
Right.
car needs to
Right.
automatically stop something,
Right.
right? Like,
What does happen? I don't do braking. What? Don't mess with our brakes, okay? We don't know what will happen.
it's
We don't
important to make sure that there's some sort of standardization implemented already, right?
Yes.
So that you're not wondering, oh, is it perfect? Is it not perfect? Because when you're stuck in that perfection mindset, nothing ever gets done.
So what I do, at least when I used to close clients, right,
Teach it.
is when they would come in or when they would call for, hey, we want your business to do XYZ consulting, whatever job, would go through the whole sales pitch, ask them their pain points and so on and so forth. But at the very end, once we've closed them, I'm like, hey, there's something I share with all clients. All right. And it's a must before you come on board.
Right.
It is, hey, we're not perfect people over here. Don't expect us to be perfect. Just like you came here looking for us to help you with your business, hey, there are times where we will need you to look out for our business. Right. We may step on your toe. We may do something wrong. We don't just want you to leave and, just write a bad review or whatever it is. Let's talk about it. We're both here to build each other up. Mm-hmm. Let's operate with some grace. Mm-hmm. Once that person says yes, we're like, welcome to the Untitled CPA family.
That's how you got me.
But that's
I should have left at that point.
But that's because you
I set the tone up front because we are not perfect. Yeah. And anybody that expects us to be perfect, I'm sorry, maybe the CPA firm like downstairs or upstairs is a little bit better than us. So you might want to go that way.
All right. Why would you send them the headache? Nobody's perfect. You out there, you're not perfect. And the sooner you realize that, and obviously I think the intent is the main thing. Did this person intend to be neglectful, or was it just everyone's human? Obviously that's not an excuse, but what are they doing to mitigate it? Mm-hmm. And why can't you just go to them first? I'm not in the business of, I haven't ever left a 1-star review. So that makes no sense to me because it does nothing. It does nothing to fix your problem. The business may or may not even see it.
Yep.
All it is you sound like a complainer online. That's how I feel. That's why I don't leave 1-star reviews. I just go, I seriously do. I go, hey, I've been waiting here all day. Like, I almost left. Are you guys too busy for me? Can I come back another time? And no, I'm serious. And I say, and one business owner to another business owner, because this happens to everyone. And the owner doesn't even know this is going on. Yeah. I'm like, look, if I'm here like this and I'm a kind person, how many people have been upset and have left? I was like, I'm just letting you know. You don't have to compensate me for anything, but something in your system needs to change. Yeah. That's how you give constructive criticism and to improve your experience next time, hopefully, and someone else's experience before you go run online and leave a 1-star review. I just feel like that's like not productive to solving any of the issues. It's just like a little kid complaining to me. Well, that's why I mean, everyone has their own opinion. That's why I don't leave 1-star reviews.
Well, okay, let me flip it a little bit because we've talked about perfection versus, good enough. But what about my way or the highway? Oh. We've got a lot of us entrepreneurs, you come into our business and all that. This is the way I want it. This is the way I want it, That's true. And you've mentored a lot of different businesses. You've run a business
as far as clients.
Yeah, any process, like the owner, like you as the entrepreneur, right?
I'm confused. Can you clarify? Are you saying my way or the highway as the entrepreneur?
As the entrepreneur, coming to you? As the entrepreneur first. I like that part about the client. Let's do the part about the entrepreneur. I'm gonna let you go first. And
so that's actually a good question, right? It's funny that you mentioned this because one of the books that changed my life, right? Like, this is what made me the chief operating officer.
Give us a secret.
Let me open up Amazon. Let's
the
go.
book is called Traction. Gino Wickman.
Yeah.
Right?
Shout out Gino.
At the end of the day, right? When you're running a business, you have to have an operating system.
Yes.
Does that make sense?
Yes.
And part of that in the book, it talks about how decisions are being made. So in my company, before I was exposed to the book, it was always seniority. Nah, I'm the COO. Yeah. We need to do it like this.
Yeah.
No, I'm the CEO. We need to do it like this, right? And then we had to come to an agreement. Okay, what is our mission and our vision? Okay, this is our mission and our vision. Okay, now, what data aligns with our mission and vision? So every time we make decision, what trumps everybody is the data.
That's it.
We always say, what does the data say? Because if the data says we need to go left, then guess what? We go left.
Doesn't matter who's who.
If the data says we need to go right, we go right. Now, if the data suggests something and we try it and it doesn't work, right? That is where you start to research and say, okay, did we have the wrong data? Is this something that we're missing? But at the beginning, the first thing that we point to is the data, right? And a lot of times, if the data is wrong, it's because we're looking into the wrong data, right? Or maybe there isn't enough data. But in the structure of a business, I talk about standardization, right?
Yeah.
I think it has to be known. There has to be some sort of standardization that has been implemented on how you do things, how you make decisions. Even if you don't have data, maybe it's a voting thing, right? But at the end of the day, like, whether you're making a perfect decision or whether you're making is a good enough decision, the reality is, as long as there is a standardized template,
Yes.
then everything else is easy. What are your thoughts?
Alan, you wanted to share?
I was so into his response that I started running numbers in my head of what data I need to do with stuff. Because you start mentioning data, my mind just goes straight to the numbers.
Bro, data's
I almost forgot the question. Like, where you say my way or the highway, right?
Yeah.
So I'm a firm believer that, like, we're doing it my way unless you have a better way. We can try. Really, if my way works,
that's a
we're gonna do it my way unless you have a better way.
How do you determine
Let me finish.
way is better?
Let me finish.
Who determines?
Let me. Let me finish the data. Let me finish. No, because if we're doing it this way and we're getting these results and you think you can do it better, I'm like, we're doing it my way. But go ahead and do it your way. Okay. What have we learned? Your way didn't work. Go back to my way.
But some people wouldn't even waste time to even let people try.
I'm like, okay. I was like, that doesn't make sense. But you know what? Try it on these few cases and we'll do it, or we'll try this. Then if it works, I'm like, oh, I learned something new. What took you so long? You had this idea, If it doesn't work, I'm like, hey, it didn't work. We got to go back. Like, we got to quality control. We got to make sure that we're doing things like efficiently. We don't need to be doing things just because you like it your way, because people come from other organizations. Oh, we always did like this. We always did. You always a good one. Well, we always, okay, how did that work? And how did this work? Huh. But then
why aren't you there no more?
No, because like certain things I'm like, but then I'll take this long. And how much does that cost? And I'm like, okay, divided by this, then you're losing this and you're spending the same amount of time. You're making less money. But no, like, like you start running those numbers or you're like, well, we've tried it that way. It didn't work it worked for us. You guys were doing it wrong. I'm like, how are we doing it wrong? Did y'all have it? Well, yes, we had, you go to that whole thing. But again, it's my way unless your way is better. And if we don't have results to show your way is better, then we're back to my way.
Let me give a different perspective, right? And this question is for you, Tosin. There are situations where your team will present a case to you, right? And they're saying, hey, we think we should go left because the data points that we should go left. But you're the visionary, you're the CEO, and you're ultimately responsible, right? And sometimes as a CEO, you need to make some gut decisions because something that you can't explain is just telling you that, no, I know the data says this, but I think we should go the other way. Have you ever been in that situation, and how did you handle it?
Definitely. Here's the quick answer. All right, because I thought about a long story, but you know what? Let's
don't let it play today.
No. So the quick answer is you've got to have a track record.
The data.
That's data. If you're gonna counter whatever that data is saying, you've got to have a track record. If you don't have a track record, your team is gonna start losing hope in you. And the more it happens, they'll get disconnected. They might leave and whatever. And so you start losing good people. But the only way to make sure that you can set your foot down and go with that gut feeling.
My house.
Yeah, you need to make sure that the last time or the majority of the last times that you've been right.
But in order for that to happen, you almost have to keep score because your team will forget their failures. I'll be honest with you, because I don't know about you. I'm like,
terrible at keeping score.
No.
Me too.
No. This is what I do. It's not that I keep score, but I let my team know, you would like to do that? Okay, you're championing and flagshipping this. If it works, great, awesome. If it doesn't work, you have to take accountability for this, and you have to resolve it and figure out how
You're still
we
responsible, bro.
Doesn't matter. It's the point that now before they make some move on your dime, their heads on it, like they have now, it's like, it's easy to make suggestions and make moves when you're not the one who's feeling any kind of burn, right? Yeah. But when you put the burn on people, before they make decisions, they think about it like you would. So there's been some times where they won, and I was like, that was a good decision. You need to start making more decisions like that. There was a time where they failed, and I was like, I know. The next time, there was a couple of times where they made, I was like, you remember this? Yeah, that was different. Okay, so what did you learn from that? Well, you're right. I should look that up more. I don't like. They don't want to.
I like
they
the
don't
different
wanna,
perspective because some of us can't keep score. Like yesterday,
even
to remind them that that they tried something yesterday.
I forgot already.
I forget. But I said, have you? Sometimes I say, who did? Sometimes I don't remember who did it, and so I say, wait, didn't we do this? And somebody said, who did that? And they be like,
everybody's funny.
Wait, didn't we switch this last time? Because who won it? Was that you? No, it wasn't me. It was. They're no longer here. That's why. And I'm like, no, it was you. It was you. Like,
even in my personal relationship, my wife would say, give me an example. Bro,
I can't remember. I hate that.
I remember
really?
how it felt.
I know.
I can't give an example. So somebody at work would be like, "Oh, give me an example of this decision or that."
You forget things quickly. Yeah, that's because you want to move on to the next and be constructive. So
I don't know.
I don't ever remember who did what, but I remember something. We do something like this. Exactly. I'm like this. Did somebody already say something like this? Like, no. And it's always, no, it was this person that left.
So you talked about how you would deliver the message, placing some accountability, right? To your team.
Correct.
Question I have for you is, how do you make sure that, when you're delivering that message, your team are not feeling like they're not being valued? Because it's one thing for you to hire somebody to be responsible for making a decision or to do something. It's another thing for you to make an executive decision to override the decision that they're making to go the opposite way. Because you always want to keep your people. You want to make sure your people feel valued. You want to make sure they feel special. Right. But at the same time, as a leader, you know that the buck stops with you.
I mean, it's like we always say, right? People that work for you or work with you, they've got to buy into the dream, right? So that's why
they're buying into you.
You're the dream. That's right. Because
a dream.
Visionary.
In a dream.
The visionary, right? But they've got to buy into you. So that's why you want to make sure that they feel like they've got some ownership, so to speak, in every decision that's being made. All right. So sometimes you will have to explain it why, right? Sometimes some of us entrepreneurs, we've been running our businesses. So you can, as the old adage, the Nigerian adage says, what a child can see from a skyscraper, an elder can see lying down, right? So
that's
you've
good.
already, they send like some kind of suggestion, and all of a sudden you've already processed it in like 3 seconds. You're like, no,
you've already been to that.
But
sometimes you cannot be.
You're too dismissive. You can't do that.
Definitely not.
And those are like leadership traits, right?
Yes, because you've got to slow it down. And sometimes, you already processed it. No, but sometimes you just maybe you walk it through with them. Like, okay, you know what?
That's exactly what it is.
Idea. Like, okay, tell me if, you start leading them to where you already at.
You don't even have to lead them. You just ask them questions.
That's the questions. And you're leading them with those
start
questions.
saying like, oh, I didn't think about that. I didn't think right.
And then all of a sudden they come to it like, you know what? Never mind. I'm like, you sure? And I already knew it's a no, but I'm like, you sure?
And that's a good thing because when I was running my company, one of the things I would do, especially when I'm having my one-on-one with my the people that were reporting to me, is when I know that a decision is about to be made and I know that it's the wrong decision or a decision that was made that was the wrong decision, I don't just flat out tell them like, that was the wrong decision. You know, I have a conversation with them just to really understand their rationale, their mindset behind it, right? And then based on the questions that I'm asking, they're going to arrive at that conclusion. Man, that was stupid. I don't even know why I did that.
Now, I know some of my staff may be watching. So yes, I got to admit, sometimes I do get hangry. All right. So they come to me with this.
Like, sometimes.
Why you talking to me? You know? Or sometimes I warn them, I'm like, yo, I haven't had my coffee yet. You know, I haven't eaten lunch. I'm hungry. All right. So just bear with me. All right.
Oh, I know when my staff's angry. I whenever someone says something like, hey, go to lunch. Yeah, I'm like, hey, go to lunch. Why? What happened? I can help. I'm like, no, it's okay. You've done a lot today. Just go get some food in your stomach. It's like, am I that hangry? Is it that office? I'm like, obvious. I'm like, no, you're wonderful. Just go to lunch. Or sometimes I am straight like, I can tell you're hangry. Just 5 more minutes. We'll go to lunch.
So what about
or sometimes I just order lunch. I'm like, hey man, order lunch.
What about for the solo entrepreneurs, right? You know, not everybody have people working for them, right? Yeah. You know, how do you balance the perfection versus, you know, good enough, or should I say progressive mindset?
Man, I think it just comes from having perspective. You've got a network out there. You've got to see what other people are doing, whether in similar businesses or just business in general, right? You know, we had this past time when we had the entrepreneurs meeting, we had a what do you call it? A neurosurgeon. No, was he a neurosurgeon? I forget.
No, I wasn't there.
You know, the way he operates his business is completely different because he's very high touch and high perfection.
Yes.
But he can get perspective from somebody else who's not high touch, high perfection, and see that, you know what, maybe when I'm doing surgeries, right, I need to be perfect. But there's so many facets to my business that this perfection versus non-perfect or good enough is going to bleed in so I can learn, right? So you need outside perspective. You need to make sure that your network.
I'm so happy that you mentioned that, because especially when I'm advising, especially folks that are solo entrepreneurs, you know, one thing I've realized is that business, especially if it's your first business or just being a solo entrepreneur in general, it could be a very emotional thing, right? And a lot of times when you're emotional about something, you know, it clouds your judgment, right? And one thing I always tell people is when you're trying to decide whether something needs to be perfect or whether it needs to just be good enough, it's always good to have an advisor. Yeah. You know, and sometimes when I tell people you're only saying that because you're an advisor and you just want to take my money.
Yeah, you want me to charge you.
Yeah. but the reality is I've been where you're at and I know, and you know, a lot of times, you know, you ever heard that saying that, you know, when it's not your situation, you can give better advice because you're not emotionally involved. Yeah. Versus
when you're in it.
Exactly.
It's so clear when you're not.
Of
when
course.
It's not, like so clear. It's not even. You can just dissect it like nobody's business and get good results.
Quarterback.
When your business, you're like, it's like everything's equal.
No, but you even start saying, no, it's different.
Yeah,
it's different. It's different. No, it's not like it's different.
It's like, it's like you got 30 blitzes at once. And you're just like, who's open? I can't see.
If I'm in a relationship, sometimes, you know, even in my personal relationship, something will happen. I'm like, this sounds like something that I would advise somebody on. Why is it that I can't advise myself?
Right? Why is it so cloudy? Right?
Exactly. Because there's an emotional connection, right? So as a solo entrepreneur, if you're running a business, right, and you're trying to make a decision or you're trying to put something out there and you're trying to, you know, decide, okay, does this thing need to be perfect or, you know, is it good enough? The question you need to ask yourself is, am I chasing perfection or am I chasing, is it working? Yeah. Right? And if that thing is working and you know that there's an opportunity to continue to improve I think in project management, they call it agile, right?
Yeah.
As long as it's iterative and you know that you can constantly tweak and make changes until you have a product market fit or whatever your destination, whatever your goal is. I think that's, as long as you can meet that criteria, you're good.
I
But
think
nothing can be
what you
perfect.
said about advisors, I think the difficult thing is, in my industry, we have so many advisors, so many consultants and advisors. It's like they see dentistry and they're like, money. The issue is there's a lot of just snake oil there.
Yeah.
Like, there's so many people are advisors, and they'll run your practice into the ground. I've had it happen twice. And it's just difficult. Like, the question I ask is, I know what I would do, which is just keep seeking advice from people who are successful. It may not work in your business, but it gives you insight on different perspective.
Yeah.
See what they did, and if they have some advice, maybe you can use that advisor if you want that type of practice or business, the way that they run it. But I want to ask y'all real quick, how do you guys discern the advisors? Because as we know, consultants and advisors, I feel like they're a great one, and it's a shame that it gives them a bad name, but there's a lot of scammers out there.
That's going to have to go to number one advisor over there.
For me, there are two types of advisor, right? There is the specialist advisor. So when I say specialist, meaning like either you're a CPA, you're a lawyer, or a compliance person, you specialize in something. So you're coming to me to advise me based on your expertise.
A specific thing.
Specific. And then you have a general business advisor. You can kind of look at it also like a mentor, right? So the general business advisor is kind of like the role that I play, which is that, hey, I've been there. I know what you're trying to do, right? And I can help you navigate the complexity. Right. So the way you to navigate that is, if it's a specific skill set advisor, just check their track record. Right. But if it's general, if it's a general advisor, it's about the connection, that you're able to build with them. Right. So a lot of times, you can tell based on the conversation, the vibe, like, do you guys have the same values? Those type of things. There are certain questions that you're going to ask them, right? That's going to give you the confidence that this is the right person, right? If you have discernment, right, and that your discernment is going to come from a lot of questions that you're going to be asking them, right? But that's usually what I tell people on how to.
Well, you know what? I don't want us to talk too much about that, because that is actually one of our next episodes. All right. But just to wrap it up real quick, when it comes to perfection versus good enough, a lot of people have this failure to launch because they're looking for that perfection before they get out there.
No such thing, my friend.
There is no such thing out there. All right. If you're trying to start a business, if you're trying to do something, just jump out.
MVP.
Just jump out. Yeah. Just jump out and try it out. All right. They've told you up here, maybe you need to fail fast and figure out, is it the right move? Is it the right structure? Is it,
especially if you're young?
Yeah. But once you've had your business, you've got some structure, you've got some people possibly. Now it's about having the right processes, the right structure, so that you can figure out what's that difference between perfection and good enough. All right. And we grow from there.
That's right.
All right. So everyone, it's been another episode of Beyond the Grind. Please make sure you subscribe, you like it, leave us some comments.
Yes.
We want to hear some examples where you struggled with that perfection versus good enough. All right. And let's have a good one. Thank you all.
Peace.
If you want to tell us who your favorite is, you can just comment Alan.
Host, man, put it down there.
I've just been quiet.
Some of us don't have to talk at all. Don't talk at all. See you on the next one.